Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's SafetyChain Leadership webinar, How to Demonstrate Continuous Improvement in Your SQF Program. We're very excited to have our special guest speaker, Cathy Crawford. Cathy is a Vice President with our partner, HACCP Consulting Group, and we'll tell you a little bit more about Cathy's background, but I think you're going to really find this very informative webinar today. Before we begin, let me just give you a few housekeeping announcements. Our webinar is hosted today on WebEx. If you have any questions while you're still online, technical questions, you can go out of full screen. You simply just go to your toolbar at the top, and there's a little return button there. You can do that, or you can see a chat button on the right-hand side of that screen. That way you can stay in full screen and send a chat to Jill Bender, host. If you, for some reason, are having trouble dialing in or it's not working while you're on here, you can call WebEx directly at 1-877-509-3239. There's two ways to listen to our event today. One is through your speakers. If you're having trouble with the speakers, you can use the call-in number that was provided in your confirmation email. I see questions from many of you already about the slides and the recording. Everybody will, within 24 hours, get an email that will allow them to download the slides and recording, as well as request other information. We're going to be doing our QA session at the end of the presentations, but you don't have to wait until the end of the presentations. If you've got a question, you want to make sure that it gets queued up while it's fresh on your mind. Again, the toolbar that should be dropping down from the top of your screen, there's an arrow on the right-hand side. If you click on that, the first line is Q&A. Click on that, and you can enter and send your question. When we get to the Q&A part, I'll also take us out of full screen so that you'll be able to see it, and that way we'll get to as many questions as we can. For your privacy, the only names that you're allowed to see if you're looking at the Participants tab are the names of the hosts and the presenters and your own name. Because of privacy and the fact that we've got hundreds of people on this webinar today, we don't show the names of all of the other attendees. And with that, let's just move on. Our agenda today is going to start with Cathy. Cathy's going to talk about continuous improvement in your SQF program, including code requirements, process, data, suggestions to target, and suggestions for demonstrating progress. We're then going to have a brief look at how technology can help you with your SQF program and your continuous improvement program, and then we'll take your questions. So with that, I'd like to introduce Cathy Crawford. As you can see here, we're not going to read all of these bullets. Cathy, we're very, very lucky to have here with us today. Cathy is a VP at the HACCP Consulting Group. She's had 20 years experience in consulting, food manufacturing, food chemistry, and microbiology. She was a food defense instructor for workshops from the USDA. She's a registered trainer for Safe Quality Foods, SQF. And with that, Cathy, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can get to the meat of the presentation here, and welcome so much to our leadership series.
Thank you, Barbara. Just a reminder, here's the agenda for today, and you can see that this is a huge topic. I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate how many people take the time out and are interested in this area, and it's because it is such a large topic and relatively new to SQF since it was new to the code when Edition 7 was published. I want to remind you that there is never a one-size-fits-all answer for any topic, really, within food safety. But today, by the time we finish this webinar, you will have a few solid ideas, at least on how to get started with continuous improvement. So we need to start with the code. As a licensed training center with HACCP Consulting Group, we always go back to the code, not necessarily the guidance. We have to base our information on the code because that's the standard. And the code says, senior management shall establish a process to improve the effectiveness of the SQF system and demonstrate continuous improvement. That's under 2.1.2.9. Related to that is this other comment that says the company is to establish and review objectives. That's under section 2.1.1.1. Many people miss that second bullet, and they're both closely tied together. In order to establish and review objectives, it is essential that you have a system to help lead you to do that. So those two parts of the code are very closely connected. Now let's look at interpreting the code. That's key because so many people sometimes interpret it differently. Pay attention to the wording. The first few words, it says senior management shall. It doesn't say the practitioner shall or the QA manager shall. It says senior management. So we're aiming for the senior-most person at a particular location who should be involved in this process. And what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to establish a process. Note, it does not say senior management shall show the auditor at least one completed project that shows that you have improved upon something. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a process. So senior management shall establish a process to improve effectiveness and demonstrate continuous improvement. Let's look a little bit more closely at, okay, what does that mean? We're supposed to demonstrate or improve the effectiveness of the system. So we need to look at what's really the desired result of having an SQF system in the first place. Well, everyone's goal primarily is certification. You need an indication that your product and your process meets Global Food Safety Initiative expectations. That's the primary goal. But then another thing you're looking for is effective application of a food safety management system and control of conditions. And this would be demonstrated through showing that your system is stable. We're going to be looking for ways to demonstrate that your system is stable and under control. But in a certain sense, stability is not a good thing because we're not just looking for stability, we're looking for improvement. If you remember, in a couple of places in the code, it talks about the importance of looking for trends. One is under customer complaints, that's under 2152. And the other one is, I believe, under maintenance, where it talks about a review of failures under 1129. Those sections require that you look at trends. It's interesting that the code doesn't actually state that you have to respond to those trends, but that's what we're looking for under continuous improvement. Not just find the trends, but do something about them. And so an effective system is going to lead you to do that. It's going to lead you to producing those safe quality products, and it's going to lead you to a general improvement of your quality and safety system. And the bottom line is that what we're trying to do is assure customer satisfaction. So when we said the first goal of your system is to be certified, it's so important to recognize that certification is not enough. When a company sets goals and objectives, sometimes when I'm consulting with them, in their very first year, I'll say, it's okay to say your goal is to get certified. But beyond that, you need to try to do more. And that's what this continuous improvement is about. Your certification audit is just a snapshot. It's a sample, and the auditor might miss items when they go through the plan. Everyone knows that that can and does happen. So your audit really has little value unless there's some assurance that the company is committed to quality and safety and is going to continue that process well beyond the dates of the audit. The company's job is to earn customer trust by having systematic controls that were witnessed by the audit. So this means the auditor sees systems and not necessarily just symptoms. A symptom is a condition or a record or an action or a result of something that comes out of having a good system. So we know now that we're supposed to do continuous improvement. It's supposed to be led by senior management, and it's supposed to be some kind of process. So how do we get started? Well, these are the general steps toward improvement, and we'll just kind of briefly talk about these. First of all, you've got to establish commitment from the top of the organization throughout the organization. Each level should understand their role in the process and how it relates to the core values of the business. The next step that we briefly mentioned is that you identify a process, then get that process going and be persistent and keep it going. Once that's in place, you want to ensure the results that you're obtaining are demonstrated and celebrated. It's important to stress the positive aspects about this system and to follow up with senior management through management review so that you can ensure continued support of this culture that's developing that says, we don't just do a good job to pass an audit. We do a good job to make safe, quality food and to continue to try to improve along the way. Sometimes, I know, I've worked with a lot of companies. Sometimes it's hard to get that senior management commitment. Sometimes it's hard to get commitment from the hourly employees as well. So it's important to talk about the benefits. There's a lot of things that can result from having a good continuous improvement system in place. And you can see some of them listed here. You might have fewer errors, less variation. A great one might be less stress. But the bottom line with putting a system in place is that it's going to lead to greater confidence. Results are going to vary from business to business, but when someone asks, what's the point? Why should we do this? Don't just do it because the code said so. Do it because you really will achieve some of the benefits here. Although some but not all will apply to you, they will have a definite and clear benefit. So how do we get there? We need to establish roles within the company. Notice that instead of just saying, make sure senior management happens, I wrote enable senior management. Sometimes, and I think I can make a fairly safe assumption that many people on this phone call are practitioners or QA managers. Sometimes it's middle management's job to enable senior management to lead. And you do that by communicating. Stay in touch. Make sure they know what the challenges and successes are of the system. And then middle management's job is to communicate both upward and downward throughout the organization to be sure that everyone is participating at all levels and they feel like they're part of the process. Everyone should be involved in continuous improvement. And so we say again, it's a process. What's a process? The code says you have to develop a process. Well, by definition, and this is straight off of the internet, I think I pulled it from Wikipedia, a process is a method or a planned series of actions. So those actions could be something like routine meetings or updates or internal audits or inspections. Could also include methods, which I have some listed here, and we're going to talk about those in more detail. Remember our goal. We're not just looking for symptoms or individual successes related to improvement. We're looking for a process that talks about how you're going to ensure improvement and that it's likely to continue. So one of the easiest and most common methods is what I call the two-step method. Somebody with a bunch of authority gets a great idea and he tells everybody to do it. Admit it, everybody's done this. You needed to do something, so you did it. Sometimes this works great, but it really is a limited concept because people of authority often have a limited view of the organization. They might only see it at an upper level. But then people with a detailed view of the organization might have limited authority. So whoever is having these ideas might not be able to offer a complete solution to what might be poor performance or in an area of improvement because they're not able to work with a team and look for a true root cause analysis. This kind of improvement method is sometimes good, sometimes successful, but it's really not sustainable because it relies on someone getting an idea. You don't go to the grocery store to get ideas. Sometimes you get ideas in the middle of the night, but that's not really a sustainable system. We're looking for a process. There are some informal methods that you might use in order to generate ideas, and that would be something like routine meetings. But routine meetings a lot of times are very routine at first. You'll have them quarterly in your first year of SQF certification, and in the next year you might forget a quarter. And in the next year you might forget a couple quarters but have a meeting right before your audit. That's reality. That happens. Without a system to keep things moving along and keep motivation present, routine meetings aren't the best process for continuous improvement. You might have an internal reward system like a suggestion box, but again, that relies on people just getting ideas from somewhere. You might be using key performance indicators, and these are usually measurable characteristics about your product or your process, where you collect these metrics and set goals, and often this does lead toward improvement, but sometimes it just leads toward number crunching. You have to make sure what you're doing really does add value. Some companies also choose to implement what they call process improvement teams. Now we're getting closer to what the code is looking for because there's teamwork involved. If that team continues to meet, we may be getting even closer to a system that's going to achieve the goal. The key here is that makes it better is that it's a team, but teams need direction. Just because you established a team doesn't mean you established a process to improve. It's not necessarily the same thing. So these next two slides, you might notice on the lower left-hand side, there's a logo from the Quality Support Group. I have learned so much about food safety. I've been in the industry 20 years or so, and I've learned a lot about food safety management and management systems. But frankly, when it comes to continuous improvement, I've learned more outside the food industry than inside of it, and that's because other industries have been doing this longer than we have. If you look at pharmaceuticals, medical devices, automotive industries, those types of areas, they've been using more formal systems or processes like what's listed here and what you'll see on the next slide much longer than we have in the food industry, and we can learn from them. I recommend, if you're interested in learning more, you contact the Quality Support Group through me. This is just a quick overview of two formal type processes for quality improvement. This is the Deming cycle, where you repeatedly follow this pattern of planning, doing, checking, and acting. You plan something for change, you take small steps under controlled circumstances and measure to see how you're doing, to see if the results were what you wanted, act on it as if it was a successful idea to standardize it so that you can sustain that change. If it was not a good change, you want to improve it, of course, and then repeat the cycle again. So you can see it's not just one project, it's a continuous process, which is pictured here in that circular pattern. The next one you can see is also a similar idea, that it is a continual process, and this comes from Six Sigma methodology. You start and you define where you are today, understand your process, and where you would like to be. You measure baseline examples of things where you might be finding waste, where you might be finding causes of poor performance or unacceptable levels of variability within your system where increased control might reduce that variance. You start to measure those things and analyze your results. When you think you know what the cause of poor performance or too much variability is, you work on those to try to decrease that variability and analyze your data. You work toward improvement, make plans, improve your process, and then control the items that you see are having the impact that is desired. You use metrics, measurements, to define and control progress following this system. I don't claim to be an expert in Six Sigma. I do recommend that you contact me. I can get you more information on this as needed, but it is a system that has clearly been demonstrated to be effective in other industries. So we talked about some varieties of processes that you can use, some very informal and some formal. But we haven't talked about yet about improve what? And I know that's what many of you are here for. You're looking for ideas. What do we improve? First of all, don't improve just for the audit. Do this to add value to your organization. I have repeated this so many times in my consulting and training work that if you only do SQF because you have to, the system will likely not be as successful or sustainable as you would hope. Keep in mind that the code does not require improvement of everything. It doesn't say you must improve in every area of the code. So what you should do is get together a team that envisions excellence. Think about how you could do better. What could be the vision of the future where your product is less risky, more guaranteed to be consistent and safe and high quality. If you have trouble envisioning that type of thing, consider getting assistance. A lot of times it takes someone with an objective view to come into your organization maybe once or twice a year to look around and see things that you missed because you're there every day. Sometimes it helps to have someone come in and work with you towards developing ideas for continuous improvement, identifying areas of waste or potential improvement. One of the challenges we face is that as food companies, we make safe food. And when they say we need to improve, the question is, can it be safer? If a ready-to-eat item is free of pathogens, you can't make it more free of pathogens. But what you can do is identify areas of risk in your process and reduce that risk. Find ways to measure it. Find ways to increase stability or control. Find ways to increase trust from your customer. And you do that by improving clarity. Make sure your communication is very clear in your written documents, your specifications, or other communications. Make sure your product and your actions are consistent, and make sure you can demonstrate competency. And we do this, we get there through training. So the overall goal is to improve quality. The more consistent you are with your product, your process, and your communication with your customer, the more they're going to trust you. And consistency will also reduce cost, which most likely ties directly into your organization's business objectives. Still, we don't have any specific projects in mind, so just think very common sense. What keeps you awake at night? As quality assurance managers or practitioners, I bet most of the people on this line have gotten a phone call at an inconvenient time, either in the middle of the night or when you were on vacation because there was a problem. Those kind of calls, those kind of circumstances should be the ones that you should think about. How could we have controlled this better? How could we have improved so that this won't happen again? Don't just think about your own concerns. Try to think from your customer's perspective. What are their concerns? They watch the news. They see outbreaks. They are very aware of the food safety concerns of the American public. Keep that in mind. Think about where you lack confidence, but overall, it's important that you select items that can be measured, and if you improve them, you're going to add value to the process or the organization. Keep in mind always that the key to continuous improvement is that you have to collect data. You can't improve something unless you measure it. So we're going to talk about data just for a few minutes here. Just a quick reminder about good data and what creates good data. Records should always be recorded at the time of the event by the responsible person. And you indicate this using initials or signatures on paperwork or electronic signatures by logging in using secure passwords into your electronic data management systems. All records should be in ink or they should be secure, and that could mean electronically secure. No missing or omitted results, no improper alterations like scribbles or scratch outs, and certainly not whiteout. You should always always include appropriate units like degrees Fahrenheit or pounds or ounces, or don't make me guess if a time was AM or PM if I'm your auditor. Avoid signs of falsification, obviously, and we need to ensure both accuracy and precision, and those two terms are key, so we're going to spend a few minutes to talk about them. I know you didn't think this was a data management webinar, but continuous improvement can't be demonstrated without data, and we have to make sure the data is good. So let's talk about accuracy. Accuracy is the closeness of a measurement to the true value, and it's limited by the calibration of the tool you use and the test method you use. So for example, if you have a thermometer, when you purchase it, it'll say its accuracy is plus or minus 2 degrees. That limits you. Your scale might be plus or minus a pound or plus or minus a certain number of ounces. Or if you're measuring something with test strips that are color-coded or color-based, those results are almost always in terms of a range. So you can't measure with a lot of specificity using test strips. When you're measuring things and you're aware of the accuracy of the equipment, keep in mind recording more decimal places is not always better. I've seen employees write down as many decimal places as they can see on a reading for perhaps a digital readout of a result because they think they're doing a good job. And in the end, they're working harder than they need to because they're collecting data that doesn't have value. If a scale is only accurate for example, maybe plus or minus 1 pound, and an employee keeps recording things like 10.2.9.65 pounds, that doesn't make sense. Only record the values that make sense for the tool that you're using. You have to make sure you get the correct results, and we're also looking for consistency in our measurements. So we talk about precision. Precision is the closeness of values to one another when repeated measurements are made. So you can see that top picture there, the second one as well, that says you're getting the same answer every time. Consistency is the ability to get the same answer under the same conditions. But the question is, are we getting the right data? Data with great precision might not be accurate. The tools to get accurate are essential to getting accurate data. So you have to know how you do this to collect both accurate and precise data so that you meet requirements. So you want both precision and accuracy. That top picture shows what imprecise and inaccurate data looks like. Your measurements vary quite a bit. That means you lack precision, and it's also not accurate. You're not hitting the mark in the center of that target. The second one shows precise but inaccurate data. So you're getting repeatable results, but they're wrong. That's not going to help you demonstrate continuous improvement. It's going to help only confuse people because your data is wrong. The goal is to have precise and accurate data. And when we talk about goals, so we're collecting data now. Sometimes people collect the wrong data to start with when they're trying to demonstrate improvement. Always be sure you have a good measurement tool and a good sampling plan. And make sure that the data truly represent the condition or the process you're measuring. For example, perhaps you set a goal to decrease room temperatures because that will decrease the risk of bacterial growth in your process. It's already safe. Let's say your room is at 40 and you want to bring it down to 38 as a goal. If you are measuring room temperature, you have to make sure that room temperature was your goal, but ask yourself, is our real goal product temperature? Because that's where the bacteria may be. Make sure whatever you're measuring is what you want to learn about, and if it's not, make sure there's a direct correlation, for example, between room temperature and product temperature. Another example would be testing generic bacteria compared to testing for pathogens. You might want to demonstrate that pathogens are not likely in your environment, but unless you can show a clear correlation between the test you are conducting, for example, for generic bacteria, and the pathogen you are looking for, you might be collecting data that's not of value. This third one is a direct example associated with some guidance that SQFI put out on their website regarding allergen control and validating your allergen system. The code asks you that if you are using cleaning to prevent allergen contamination between uses on the same equipment and a processing line, that you have to validate that cleaning. Note it says validate the effectiveness of cleaning. It doesn't say validate that the product is free of allergens. It makes more sense to test the environment than to test the product. So different tests have different values at different times. Make sure you know the purpose of your testing before you start collecting data. And then keep in mind that data shows a condition relative to a standard or benchmark. All data is relative. It's meaningless by itself. You have to compare it to something. So you need to identify an appropriate standard for what you're measuring. And those standards might come from industry guidelines, they might be supplier specifications or customer specifications, or they might be internal benchmarks that you developed over time. The key with collecting data is that you first look at your method, ensure that you're going to collect accurate and precise information, and that that information is understood to be relative to a certain standard or rule, so that once that's in place, you'll know how to respond to this data even before you collect it. Have a plan before you go out and do this. It's important to use sampling and testing to demonstrate your progress, so you can sample the product, the process, or the environment. Whatever sampling plan you select, make sure it's founded on statistical guidelines or published guidelines so that you can support your decisions. Make sure when you go out to test something that you maintain your objectivity. Working with companies, I've heard multiple times people say, oh, we're going to go out to check to see how clean the environment is. it is better to state that you're going to go out and sample to see the effectiveness of sanitation. That way you're not clouding your perception and saying that we're going to see how clean it is, or to say we're going to see how dirty it is. You're just going out to see the effectiveness of the overall sanitation. It's important to track your results once you start a sampling system, and be sure to adjust your plans so that these investments in the time and materials that it takes to test things, that they actually generate value. I've seen multiple environmental analysis programs where companies will test just after sanitation to show repeatedly that there are no pathogens in the environment. For example, they'll test for listeria or salmonella, or maybe they'll test for allergens just after cleaning. Negative results at pre-op for pathogens should be relatively easy to attain. And if you're getting negative results month after month or quarter after quarter, you have to wonder if those results are really benefiting you. You're not reaching toward continuous improvement if you just keep confirming that you know how to do something already. It's important to try harder. And remember, what is a successful result? If you go out and sample for listeria and your result is negative, that could be successful because it showed that you cleaned well. However, an aggressive program, you're going to go out and look for potential pathogens in areas where you hope to find them because you want to eliminate them. You should be aggressive in looking for problems so that you can improve and eliminate those problems and continue to show that you're working toward improvement. Sometimes we just don't measure things because we're afraid. We're afraid that if you measure it, you're going to get an answer you don't like, or you're afraid that if you measure it, you won't be able to improve it. The bottom line is if you don't measure it, you won't be able to improve. If you don't measure it, you don't know where you are today, and you won't be able to defend the safety and quality of your products. And remember, this is quite a bit of what we're doing with our SQF systems, is defending the safety and quality of our products so that our customers will trust us. It takes guts to go out and sample things. It takes guts to set goals, but that's what leads to excellence, and that's what we're looking for. So we want to encourage the use of data. Don't use data as a weapon, it's a tool. Train your employees about accuracy and precision and what those things mean. Take time to investigate your results and communicate clear goals with any sampling program that you put in place. So now I'm going to get to some ideas. What can we measure and potentially improve? And I know that's what the majority of you are after. Please ensure if these ideas are valuable to you, that you not only use them, but use them as part of a system. Remember, we're looking for a process and not just results. But here are some areas where you can get results. First, look at your safety and quality plans. They're based on a HACCP philosophy. Remember, SQF is a HACCP-based system. So when you look at the core of these systems, it's the hazard analysis or the risk analysis. And often in that document, it indicates that you made a decision as to whether or not a hazard or a risk was likely based on the fact that you have prerequisite programs in place. And usually what I'll say to people is, that's great, I'm glad they're there. What would be better is if you can prove that they work. Any place in your hazard analysis where you quoted a prerequisite program, see if you can collect data to prove that it's working. You need to do this for verification and validation of the system. But once you start collecting these measurements, you'll start to see opportunities for your continuous improvement system. Make sure every decision is based on data. Check to see if your systems or your processes are stable and if hazards truly are likely or not, and if you can decrease variance. And another area, of course, always in improving your HACCP plans is to increase training. HACCP is a philosophy. It's not just development of a written program. It's a philosophy where you evaluate hazards and decide if they're likely or not, and all that should be based on a continuous collection of data. Another area for improvement would be in your crisis management plan, your business continuity, recall, or trace plan. Opportunities include improving the efficiency with which you collect data and work on your root cause analysis tools. Many companies can demonstrate that they can trace very quickly, 4 hours or less. They have the answer. But the true challenge with a real-life recall event isn't just tracing product, it's first identifying which product is involved. We need to improve our skills on root cause analysis. You won't know what to recall unless you can define when a problem started and stopped. It's important to look at your recall system to see if you can reduce the potential scope and depth of a recall, to reduce your recovery or response times. These can be measured in exercises or in real-time events if they occur. And you also might consider increasing your training. I do not recommend that you just increase the frequency of your tests. Vary how you test these systems. Have some variability in it so that you challenge yourself from time to time. Another area for opportunity is your food defense system. Just think about recent events. We had two very real events in our country. One was the explosion in Boston, and the other one was the finding of ricin in the mail. These are terrorist events, which reminds us that our food defense system needs to be in place, not just to satisfy the code, but to protect our business and to protect our customers and to protect ourselves. So look for opportunities where you can expand the areas of consideration. The code asks you to look at very simple things. Keep a broad mind as to what might go wrong and how you can control that. Most importantly, improved communication. I participated in a series of food defense tests recently with the USDA, and in each test, the company we worked with was quite surprised at the level of communication that might be required and how they might need to improve that. Remember, food defense isn't just keeping locked doors. Another area of potential improvement is supplier control. You want to measure and prove using perhaps scorecards that measure various aspects of what your suppliers do for you. You can look at order fill rates, data retrieval, meaning how fast do they respond to you when you ask for updated information. And you can look at ways that perhaps through data you can reduce their risk rating to show that you're reducing the overall risk of your product. But with suppliers, make sure you don't try to improve what you don't control. Don't try to improve their food safety systems, but try to improve your communication and your understanding of those systems. Another area for potential improvement definitely is in the preventive maintenance program. You can work to reduce downtime. That's very measurable. You can work to improve your completion rates. You don't have to have a 100% completion rate on your preventive maintenance program. It can be acceptable to say we will maintain an 85% completion rate, for example, provided those activities that are directly related to food safety risks are always taken care of first. So you can look at completion rates of preventive maintenance programs as a potential goal and make sure that that plan is balanced and based on risk. And I also put on here, don't forget sanitary design. It's difficult to measure improvements in sanitary design as part of a continuous improvement system, but what you can measure is how much time it takes to clean your facility. With improved sanitary design, you may see reductions in sanitation time, which improves food safety because the equipment is easier to clean, and it's also going to save some money, so that's a true value for your company. Another area for improvement would be internal audits. It's important, first of all, that your goal is not to decrease the number of findings that you have. That's not what we're looking for. We want to make sure internal audits are not just inspections, but they add value and they're focused as necessary to improve your process. You might try to improve your response time to the results of an audit. You might want to improve the scope, the depth, or the frequency of your internal audits. Or you might want to try and improve how you respond to your audits with root cause analysis and not just simple corrective actions. Customer complaints is another area to look at for potential improvements. You can try and improve feedback through better data collection. Ask your customers for information. And for the information you are receiving, try to decrease your response time. For example, you will always respond within 24 hours. Or you might increase how frequently you look for trends. With customer complaints, it's important that you do not set as a goal fewer complaints. You can't control how often people contact you, and similar to illness reporting rates, when one reports, many don't, just because they don't want to take the time to pick up the phone and call you. It's not a good measurement of your food safety and quality system. So I do not recommend fewer complaints, better answers, because that's not measurable. And certainly we're not just aiming for sending out more free coupons. Another area is verification and validation, and this is one of the toughest topics for many companies. Just as a reminder, these two areas simply ask, are we doing it, and is it working? One area that you can improve is the frequency of verification. If you are certified, you have a verification schedule, and you probably put it in place partially because you had to, but also because you recognize the importance of this to make sure your system is sustainable. Often we start verification with very frequent checks, maybe daily. Once you demonstrate that a certain aspect of your system is stable, you can back off on the frequency and you can adjust your verification system based on risk. So I suggest an area of continuous improvement is to adjust your verification schedule based on risk to make sense. And this is an area where you also may see a cost savings with decreased inspections in areas of your food safety plan that are very stable. With validation, you need to prove that your system is working now and that it will also work tomorrow. How do you do that? Well, you look for trends, you measure things, you look for stability wherever you can, or lack of stability, and try and improve upon that. There are so many things that we can measure. I really can't identify and name them all because of the wide variety of companies on the phone today. But consider, you can measure temperatures, you can measure time, you can measure expenses, you can measure finished product weight to make sure you are in compliance with customer and regulatory requirements. You can even measure actions, how often or how well or how long are employees washing their hands. You can measure the number of hairnets used per day. The list is endless. The key is to identify those things that you can measure that are important and can add value to your communication to your business so that you can communicate that and demonstrate continuous improvement. Our goal, again, is to demonstrate what we're doing. So I highly recommend that you consider not just using a lot of numbers and data, but putting it in a form that people will appreciate. Use charts and diagrams. Some people just learn better from pictures. It's very quick to make judgments when you can see a well-made diagram, and that's not always easy to do. Management doesn't have time to read long reports, so as a quality assurance manager or a practitioner, use scatter plots, use bar charts, use histograms, use maybe pie charts or even a map of your facility that shows dots on it for where you might have had undesirable environmental results. But the key is to make it quick and easy to see where you've had success and to plan where you need future efforts in terms of continuous improvement so that you can sustain this system. We want to reach success and sustain that culture. So not just have a vision for the future, but continually envision the future as better than what it is today. Discuss that with senior management. Share those conversations with senior management because you want to align any potential changes with business goals. Don't segregate quality assurance from business. They are tied together. They're inseparable. If your food is not safe or if your food is not of high quality, the business will suffer. So if you join your goals together towards continuous improvement, it will make a lot more sense. Engage and educate your leadership, use a plan, execute that plan, and follow the results. So that means use a process that ensures that continuous improvement is going to happen and be persistent in that process. Communication is always key to this, using results in a clear manner to talk to others about what you're learning, and you want to audit your results to see that things are still continuing as expected and sustain the gains that you have achieved, and not only do that, but go for more. Go for better stability, go for stronger savings, go for finding more waste and eliminating it from your system. Sometimes waste, in fact, is even just in our documentation systems. We write more down than we need to. Sometimes we don't write enough. I'm not telling you to stop creating good records, but sometimes we create reports that aren't valuable. So make sure you talk to people about what things add value and what don't, which ones don't, and make sure you sustain and nurture the good things in your culture. The most important thing on this slide is that we record and retain data. Data is the bottom line. You can only improve what you have measured, and it won't happen without a process. And finally, once you install these things, you identify a process on how to improve. People work toward improvement. Keep in mind that the code says you must have a process for improvement. It doesn't say you have to be successful every time. So don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to document your efforts. That's what we're looking for, a system of documented efforts toward improvement where you measure what you're doing and you seek to do better. Trying to keep in line with our timing here, I know I couldn't cover all the topics that you may have wanted to discuss. We'll talk about questions in a few minutes, but I always end my conversations by asking people to remember the power of food. In our industry, we have the ability to make people so satisfied. It could be the best ever chocolate chip cookie, the best hamburger, the best bowl of Jell-O or glass of orange juice someone has ever had, and it will make them feel good, and it'll nurture them, and it'll be a wonderful thing. We have that ability, or we can make people sick, and we can even kill people if we don't do our jobs well. So I emphasize the importance of what we do. We need to make food safe and make it better through continuous improvement programs. And if you can jot down my email address there, if I can help you in this endeavor, feel free to send me an email. And I'll turn this back over to Barbara so that she can discuss a little bit about technology and how that might serve you.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Very, very informative. What I'm going to do now, and I was reminded somewhere in the middle of my presentation that I had not introduced myself. My name is Barbara Levin. I am an SVP and co-founder of SafetyChain. What we're going to do now is just talk a little bit about how technology can help you with your SQF and continuous improvement programs, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Cathy has graciously agreed to stay on for an extra 10 minutes or so if we have a lot of questions, and if we don't have time to get through all of those, we will stay on. Excuse me. I've gone out of full screen now, so all of you can see in the right-hand corner, in the lower right, there is a box that you can type your question into, hit send, and then we'll have those all queued up. So one of the things that Cathy mentioned a lot was data, the importance of data, the ability to get your hands on data, the ability for data to be accurate. And data management reporting challenges are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to your SQF program and your continuous improvement efforts. You know, all of you talk about mountains of paperwork to prepare for audits. Our customers tell us about forklifts filled with binders. And if you have some electronic systems, electronic doesn't always mean automated. If you have information in systems that don't talk to each other, there's still an awful lot of manual work. Paper and documents can be missing. They might not have a time and date stamp. They might not have a signature. There's a lot of scheduling required for SQF activities. These are time sensitive, making sure that you're reviewing standard operating procedures, that you've got documentation of corrective and preventative actions. And trending and the ability to look at that information and, as Cathy said, make something better. It can be a daunting task if your information is all over the place, if it's incomplete. And that's where technology can help. At SafetyChain, we have a GFSI for SQF Compliance Module, which helps deal with many of these challenges. All of the latest additions and codes are loaded directly into the solution for easy access and cross-referencing, eliminating a lot of clerical time. There's a single repository for forms, records, and that can be whether you have single or many multiple locations. There's a task scheduler to keep programs current, to schedule standard operating procedure tasks, for example, with alerts that go out if those aren't done. Ongoing revision logs are time and date stamped and kept within the central repository. Photos can be taken, and there's complete documentation of, again, your CAPAs. You can demonstrate trending and continuous improvement efforts through dashboards and configurable reports. And what you wind up with is a centralized database of all safety data, of all quality data, of all standard operating procedures and CAPAs that's there. It's an unalterable time and date stamp. It's access on demand for your own internal audits or for other audits. So really, it's taking all of that paper and making sure that you get the information that you need. The system sends alerts out if the information has a deviation from standards or specifications. So it's a good tool to help execute on the programs and the parameters that Cathy discussed. This solution is part of our overall safety chain for food. This is a comprehensive food safety and quality assurance solution that in real time promotes compliance along all points in your supply chain, regulatory, third-party, and customer compliance. You can see the modules here. It's really designed to help enforce safety and quality, to eliminate manual processes and errors, to prevent withdrawals, rejections, and recalls, and protect market value and brand. Because deviations from specifications or standards are detected in real time and alerts are sent, the whole concept is really one of prevention, for giving you the information that you need so that you can catch safety issues at the earliest possible point before they start problems versus reactively trying to figure out what happened when it's really too late. What we're going to do now is take your questions. Again, the lower right-hand side has that long rectangular box. Just enter and then hit send. While we're waiting to get some of those questions queued up, I'm going to give you some more information. Again, you will receive an email that will allow you to download the slides and recording. You'll have that within 24 hours. If you would like more information on the services that the HACCP Consulting Group can provide, in addition to the SQF services, there are some of their other components there. You can see that website there, and you also have Cathy's email address. And if you'd like more information about SafetyChain and our product SafetyChain for food, you see the contact information there. And we've got several conferences coming up with some great discounts for Friends of SafetyChain, and all of that information is on our website. So with that, let's go to some of the questions that we have. We have a question from Angela, and Angela's asking, what code, Cathy, is this for the SQF code?
What code is this, was the question?
Yes.
Well, it comes from edition 7 of the code. It also applies to edition 7.1, which is going to be out in July of 2014, I believe. It'll be implemented, but the requirement for continuous improvement is under section 2.1.2.9 in the code.
Okay, great. Thank you. Marina is asking, what are your thoughts about the balanced scorecard from Harvard?
I'm not familiar with that scorecard. I've seen a few varieties of scorecards. I find that they're often very beneficial, but sometimes they become overcomplicated. Once you have a scorecard, make sure each piece of it actually adds value to your system and you're not just collecting data.
Mm-hmm. Cathy, I'm seeing some questions that are coming in through my private chat, so I'm not sure if you're seeing them, but let me put these out to you. One of the questions says that we're planning to adopt SQF at the end of this year. What should our first steps be? And I know that you can probably speak an hour on that, but maybe just some of the bigger pictures of, you know, kind of what's the order of attack.
Sure. Well, first thing, get a copy of the code, and when you go online, don't just find the code and push print because it's a very large document. Read the introductory section so you can determine which sections of the code apply to you. Most likely it's going to be the beginning, Module 2, and potentially Module 11, which is the most commonly used one. The next thing would be to identify an auditing company or a certification body. If you have a deadline in mind, get in alignment and get a contract with a certification body quickly so that you can meet your deadline. Auditors are very busy and often scheduled 6 months or more ahead of time. Then do a gap assessment to see where you are today compared to where you need to go, and start working on those pieces. I highly recommend you work with a consultant to keep you on track because the code can be confusing. Training is always beneficial. If you're interested in an SQF course, send me an email.
Okay, great, thank you. Excuse me, Cherry is saying there's often confusion, and I think you addressed some of this, between verification and validation. Can you once again clarify what the difference is?
Yeah, this has been a problem over this whole year with a lot of companies struggling with it, and we've addressed it in various conferences, but it's still difficult to understand. Quite simply, verification is, did you do what you promised to do? Go out and see if people did actually conduct cleaning activities, for example. Did they clean the equipment? Validation is, did it work? So is it clean when they're done? So you can conduct a verification by looking at paperwork to see if people filled out their records, or you can watch people do what they do. And then validation is the piece where you test either by visual or some other type of sampling or inspection systems to see if a process worked.
Okay, that helped even me. We have a question from Pedrag, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly. This is about SafetyChain, asking if we have statistical process controls abilities, and yes, we do. And you can contact us at info@, and we can give you some more. On that. Ken is saying that you mentioned root cause analysis. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the bigger steps of what has to be in place to really be able to do a proper root cause analysis?
Sure. Actually, you can take day-long seminars on learning how to do root cause analysis well. It's a certain skill, and it takes practice to learn that. But in a very simplistic look at it, you just want to ask why multiple times. Often when something goes wrong, people will only ask that once, and they'll come to an immediate conclusion that they needed more training. I've seen increased training or repeat training on corrective actions so often. And often it is not the true root cause of a problem. They didn't ask, why was this person doing it wrong? Maybe they were trained incorrectly. Maybe the procedure was wrong. Maybe the process was wrong. But it takes time to really dig into the root cause of a problem to see true gains and sustainable gains in a system instead of just firefighting, which is what we often do.
Mm-hmm. We can relate to that. Well, I think that our timing was fabulous. We are here exactly at the top of the hour, and I'm going to take a quick check into the private chat, and I don't see any other questions, so I
Barbara,
think
there are a few more questions in chat, so let me go ahead and make sure you have those. So go ahead and check chat. There are about 3 or 4 came on.
Okay, did you put those in? Okay. Thank you for that. We have different private chats. These are from Jill. Okay, so we've got a question from Odana. What is the best way to get the company fired up about internal audits? It is sometimes difficult to free up team members to perform these audits.
One of the challenges with internal audits is that we approach it from what the code requires rather than what it can do for us. The code says you have to audit your entire system once per year, and so that includes each element of the code. For example, sanitation. And some people approach that with the thought that they have to look at every sanitation procedure, every sanitation process, every sanitation record every year. If you base your internal auditing system on it'll be much more accepted. People will get excited about it because you can work on areas where you need improvement. While the code requires that you audit sanitation, it requires that you audit it as a topic not necessarily every piece of that topic every year. Internal audits work. When you go out and ask people, what do you struggle with? How can we make your job better? How can we make it make more sense? Approach it from a business standpoint, and it will probably fulfill the requirements of SQF at the same time. If your internal audits aren't working and your only training was in-house, consider having someone come in and do a seminar on internal auditing. Sometimes you learn a lot in one day, and at the same time they help you get started and get motivated.
Great, thank you. Excuse me. Another question is from Celia, asking, can SQF be used at the retail level?
I have not worked with a company doing it at retail yet, but I am convinced that it can add value to an organization at any level in the food system. I implemented SQF for a trucking company one time. They don't actually change food whatsoever. All they do is move it. By implementing SQF, they were able to add a lot of confidence in what they do and to explain that confidence to their customers. I do believe it can be implemented at retail. I do believe HACCP can have fantastic outcomes in using that at retail as well. And since SQF is HACCP-based, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. From Chris, we have, would you recommend testing for facility and environmental pathogens in a not ready to eat product?
It's not required by law. I think for not ready to eat products, I personally would not recommend doing that. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm saying it may not be, you may not be getting the value out of the expense that you're committed toward that resource. You might just look for generic bacteria levels, because in the raw end you're concerned more about not which bacteria are present, but how many of them are present, because when you go from raw to ready to eat, most lethality processes are designed toward a certain log reduction. So it may be more valuable to know what is the bacterial load in general in the environment and in the product, rather than knowing what they are at that type.
Okay, and thank you. Another question from Odana. How long do you think SQF will be around? Is there a newer, better program in the future that we should be looking at? What are your thoughts on that, Cathy?
Wow. When SQF first came out, there were those in the industry who thought, oh, this is going to go away. It's not going to last. It's just like any other phase. I don't see it going away, because it's not just a national initiative. It's tied to the Global Food Safety Initiative. And with so many stakeholders, there's a lot of strength behind this movement. The particular audit schemes that are out there may change over time. I don't see SQF as going away, though, because of its strength in the United States, and it's gaining in strength internationally as well.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, we're hearing about a lot from our customers and prospects that are planning on adopting. Nizar is asking, can you elaborate, please, on business continuity?
Sure. It's a little bit off track compared to continuous improvement, but we're just kind of discussing SQF in general here, so that's fine. Your business continuity plan is how you respond to a crisis. The key to what you document in that plan is that you protect the people, the product, the process, and your property. Whatever might happen at your facility, whatever crisis that might occur, you have to ensure that you will never ship anything other than safe, quality products. Business continuity doesn't mean that you have a promise that you will always be able to ship product no matter what. It means that you will have systems in place to control food safety and quality under emergencies. And each plan should be designed for the type of facility and its location. For example, if a facility is in Oklahoma, I expect them to have a tornado preparedness plan. If a facility is in another area that perhaps is prone to flooding, I expect them to have a plan pertaining to flooding. They don't have to be long, extensive programs, but they should address potentially likely crisis scenarios for your area and your product.
Great, thank you. And I think we've got Time for about just one more, and I'm going to ask a question from Kelly saying, is the requirement for having product specifications on received items, is there a suggestion as to what all needs to be specified, i.e. ingredients, allergens, nutrition, brand?
Quite a bit of that depends on your goals. If you are SQF Level 2 certified, the specification has to focus on safety and legality. If you're SQF Level 3, you want to pull in those quality components. The code doesn't tell you what to put into a specification. It just says you should have one. So based on your known business risks, that's what you put in the specification. If you're producing or handling a ready-to-eat product, your specification should probably indicate that it's going to be free of pathogens, things like that. It's very product specific. If you don't have a specification at all and you're having trouble getting started, you can use published specifications. For example, for produce, there are USDA guidelines for definitions of, what is a good carrot or what is an appropriate certain type of commodity, and you can quote those as your own specifications if that makes sense for you. In the meat and poultry industry, there are meat buying guides that you can also reference.
Great. Okay, thank you. I see that we have some more questions popping in. We do have to wrap up, unfortunately, now. So if you didn't get a chance to write Cathy's email down, I'm showing it again so that you can contact her directly. And with that, we'd like to thank all of you for participating today and for this very great Q&A session. Cathy, thank you very much. Very, very informative. And we're so glad that you were able to join us today. And we hope that we'll see the rest of you online for another SafetyChain leadership event soon. All of that information is at SafetyChain.com. And if you had any follow-up questions about the SafetyChain solution for SQF, you can send that to this email, info@SafetyChain.com. You'll also, when you get the slides, download the slides and recording, you'll have an opportunity there to request an ROI calculation or sales consultation or demonstration. So with that, have a great rest of your day, everybody, and thank you so much for joining.